Good morning, friends. It's nice to see all of you joining us today for the fourth of our 6 workshops this semester in Luther College's Growing Nonprofit Leaders series. I'm joining you today from my office in Regina, which is located in Treaty 4 territory on the traditional lands of the Cree, Saulteaux, Nakota, Dakota, and Lakota First Nations and the homeland of the Métis. And I spent time on the weekend enjoying this beautiful extended fall weather on the doorsteps in Ward 6 in Regina. As some of you may already know, our speaker today, Victoria Flores, is working very hard, has been working very hard the last couple of months campaigning to become a city councillor. But she's not here today about any concerns you might have about crumbling infrastructure or garbage pickup or potholes or any other City of Regina concerns. She's here today to share her expertise about social media. Victoria has been working in the nonprofit sector for over a decade. She started at the Regina Food Bank and has progressed to her current role in as communications and marketing manager at Regina Open Door Society. And since Victoria moved into this communications role at RODS, the organization's profile has skyrocketed. If you didn't know any better, you'd think the organization had a huge team of people doing their communications. Alas, no, that's not the case. She actually has one other person. Right now, has a summer student that she's been able to extend a little bit, but honestly, because of her efforts, Victoria is one of the most organized and efficient people I've ever known. And she's been able to kind of streamline and be strategic and extremely effective in her social media work. So when I was trying to think of people that I could bring into our nonprofit communications series this semester for our class, she was the first person I thought of. And for your information, the first time I met Victoria was when she was doing a presentation about Luther's nonprofit sector leadership and innovation certificate program. She did, like many of the students in our class this semester, chose to earn a certificate in this program while she was doing a degree program. Now, before I turn things over to Victoria, I just want to give a quick shout out again, like I do every time we do this, to the South Saskatchewan Community Foundation and Luther College for sponsoring these free professional development opportunities. I hope you're going to join us again next week, Monday, November 4th, same time, same place, to learn about crisis communications and media relations. But anyways, Victoria is going to speak for about an hour, and then we'll have a chance to move into some breakout rooms to network, in the small groups and talk about what we've heard. But in the meantime, I'm passing it over to the incredible Victoria Flores. Take it away, my friend.
Thank you so much, Lynn. Oh my gosh. And thank you, Colleen, too, for both of us having me here. That is quite a big introduction. And I really, really appreciate it. I think if it's one piece of life advice I can give anybody is find yourself somebody like Lynn that will encourage you and be a cheerleader because it helps you build so much confidence in everything you do. So I really appreciate that. All right, so as Lynn mentioned, I'm the communications manager at the Regina Open Door Society, and I've been doing that for the past almost 5 years. And a lot of what we do is using social media for our communications and marketing. So that's what I will be talking about today. I'll share my screen so we can kind of get started with that. There we go. All right. Okay. So as I was saying, we use social media a lot to share information about what we're doing. And there is so much with it. I mean, we could have people could have a whole semester to kind of get into all the details and tools that you could use. But what I want to talk about today are some tools and strategies to use social media in a way that it doesn't overwhelm you. because there is a ton of platforms that you can use. So ideally, most people would have some sort of strategy to help them do it without feeling like it's too much, because as most people that work on nonprofits, our budgets are usually very tiny or sometimes non-existent. So, okay, so social media for nonprofits, how to make it happen without getting overwhelmed. As Lynn said, I'm Victoria, communications manager at Open Door. And these are some of the things that I want to chat about today. And after the workshop, I will send Lynn some resources that you can have to kind of further explore some of these tools. So we'll chat about the importance of social media, building your marketing and communications tech stack, crafting a social media strategy, creating content, engaging with your audience, measuring your success, some best practices and ethical considerations, and then collaborating and working on a budget. So starting with why it matters. For many ways of sharing your message and all of that, social media is a really easy one because it's free. Unless you buy ads, it's free. And it will allow you to do things like raise awareness, and in that you can reach a wider audience. You can drive engagement, so that could be either to your social media page or to other things like your website and things like that, and build communities within that. It's really great for fundraising if you have, if that's a goal that you have, again, because you can reach a lot of people and the investment can be very minimal, especially if you're not buying any ads or paying to create content. And it's also a really, really great tool for advocacy. I have seen some really great campaigns that have used social media as a way to create advocacy for different causes. And because of how wide a reach it can have, you can go beyond your physical boundaries of like where you're at. So an example of this, I'm not sure if anybody remembers the ALS Bucket Challenge. That's about 10 years ago, but it's one of the first, I think, viral type of things that I've seen related to advocacy and fundraising and type of thing. But it was basically something where participants were asked to just dump a bucket of ice water on their heads and then post it online and challenge somebody else. So a lot of people were doing that, and then a lot of celebrities got involved. And before this challenge, you know, there was some people that were aware of ALS, but after this challenge, a lot more people who might not have thought about it or known, you know, what it is, were even more aware. So it wasn't only that it raised awareness, but it also created a lot of impact. It raised over $115 million for the ALS Association in about 8 weeks, and it was a really great way to kind of show the power of like what we now would call like a viral moment. Like everyone was doing it. I remember, you know, people tagging you on their stories or tagging you on things. I think stories were a thing back then. I think it was Snapchat, but tagging you to, you know, do the challenge, and it really had a pretty wide reach, and it was quite successful. Another one that I really like it for is creating engagement in things related to advocacy for really big causes that might seem overwhelming. So a really good one that I actually just heard about on Saturday morning on the CBC on the Laura Lynch show. It was called What on Earth with Laura Lynch. They talked with a young person about the work that they're doing to create awareness about climate change, by using Taylor Swift concerts. So after the call, and in the chat, I'll put the link to the CBC show, but it was really good because this is all youth driven. And this is just a screenshot of that person's Instagram page showing something else that she has done related to climate education and climate action. But basically, it's the using of social media to send and showcase these messages and reach a larger audience. If you can see here, this shows like 2 accounts that are hosting this, and they're tagging a bunch of other things. So all of these kind of like each account will echo and widen that audience. All right. So the next thing to think about, and I think is really important, is building your tech stack. So it's basically your toolkit. And these are the things that you would think about when you are trying to figure out how are you going to go about using social media, not just for your personal use, but actually for work-related things, or well, like a cause or things like that in a bigger area. So a few things to think about. Social media management tools are one of them. There's a ton available out there. I personally really like Hootsuite is what I use. And it's really good when you have more than one platform. So let's say if you're just managing Facebook for your organization, then you probably are good with the kind of business manager of Facebook, because you can do scheduling through that and a ton of other things. But let's say you have Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn or X. Then I really highly recommend a social media management tool, because you can use that tool to schedule everything from there. And then advertising platforms. Actually, Hootsuite allows me to buy ads through there. But you can also just use the kind of Meta Ads platform to manage those ads. And that happens when you're buying ads. I don't have much about that, because that in itself is a huge topic and can be a little bit daunting, but I can send some resources afterwards if anyone's kind of interested about buying ads and boosting posts and kind of doing the spending money on social media side of things. And then creating content. I think by now most people are aware of things like Canva, and there's other things like Adobe Creative Suite. It's a really great tool, but the barrier there is you have to know how to use some of those tools like Photoshop, InDesign, that type of thing. Whereas Canva is a lot more user-friendly and intuitive. And then, of course, many of you might now be aware of AI tools like ChatGPT. I find them really useful to make tasks that are usually just time consuming be shorter, or for brainstorming. But those tools are only as good as your ability to write a good prompt and to work with the information that you're given. But yeah, so when you're thinking about kind of your toolkit, think about those things. What tools that you're going to use to schedule things, how are you going to use it for advertisement if you're doing that, for creating content, and then things like AI tools. Then with all of these, big tip is, as nonprofits, we often get discounts and sometimes even free things. So many years ago, I was able to get onto the Canva for nonprofits, which makes the pro version free for us, which is incredibly useful, because now I can have a lot of our staff who need to access branded things to do it through Canva, and we can manage it internally, because otherwise the license would be, depending on the tier you're on, between like $15 to $20 a license. So that's another thing I'll share with you guys after, is kind of the process of applying for Canva for nonprofits. So that was a huge one. For Hootsuite, I believe I get a 50% discount. And every other tool, whenever I'm exploring something, I usually will send them an email, say like, hey, we're a nonprofit, and explain a little bit of what we do. Do you guys have discounts for nonprofits? Sometimes they have it on their website, and when they don't, I'll email them, because they might, even if they don't have something set up, they will be like, we don't, but we'll give you a 20% or something like that. And again, when you're working with a very small budget or no budget, that's really, really helpful. All right, so crafting a strategy. So that could be as big and detailed and complex as you want it, or keep it as simple as you can manage. So some of the things that I would say are very important to keep in mind when you are thinking about your social media strategy are setting your goals. So why do you want to use social media for your cause, organization, that type of thing? So let's say you want to increase your awareness and reach, and you're going to think about doing that by increasing your followers, or you're actually using it to increase your event attendance or registrations for your programs or donations, that type of thing. But then you also have to identify your audience. So who are you trying to reach out to? Who are the people that you're interested in seeing your content? So when you do that, think about your demographics. So that's usually, the people that are, is it a certain age bracket? Is it a certain location, that type of thing? And then the interest. So for example, if you are from a soccer club, you would like people who are interested in soccer to watch your content, because if all you're getting is people who are interested in crocheting, then they might not kind of do anything, any of the call to actions, because it's not part of their interest. And then choosing the right platform for this is very important as well, because that will determine the amount and type of work that you put in, but also how you engage with the people that you are that are seeing your content. So for example, Facebook's pretty good for community building because they have groups, events, things like that, but they're also older demographic who are on Facebook usually. Instagram is really good for videos and photos and that kind of storytelling type of thing. And it's a bit of a younger demographic, but not as young as like a TikTok, for example. Although TikTok's quite mixed, but it's, you won't see somebody, like a 16-year-old or 18-year-old as engaged with something like Facebook that you would see with TikTok or Instagram. And then Twitter or X is kind of for updates. I don't know, hot take here. I'm trying to avoid Twitter now because it just seems like a really toxic place in general, depending on what's out there. So I would say, depending on what you're doing, and if you have a large audience there, it's really great. But it's a lot of managing, because the interactions are connecting with other people's replies and that type of thing. But yeah, so think about, what are your goals? Who is your audience, and what platforms are you going to use as kind of your big picture thing of that. And then within that, that will allow you to ask yourself some questions. And for example, if you're using something like ChatGPT to come up with a social media strategy, you can actually tell it to ask you questions. So you can say, hey, I'm creating a social media strategy for my soccer club, and these are my goals. Here's my audience. Thinking about using these platforms. Here's some information about my club. Do you have any questions for me to help me get started? And actually, that's a really great prompt for to think about those questions that you might have not thought about, or information that you should have. And that's a really great way to get started with AI for creating a social media strategy. All right, creating content. That is my dog Monty, and I love that photo because he looks like he is telling me I need to get back to work, or that I haven't paid my taxes, one of the two. But so when you're creating content, you're competing with so much. I'm not sure if you guys have ever found yourself kind of just sitting there and just doom scrolling for a while, because there's so much that is really interesting. A lot of it'll be targeted to you based on the things that you're engaging with or that you like. So when you're putting together content, think about those personal stories, testimonials, think about kind of those behind the scenes stuff, things like infographics and educational posts can also be good. And then when you're doing that, a few things to keep in mind are keeping your branding consistent. That's where a tool like Canva is really good, because if you're doing that type of infographics and more of a graphic related thing, you can create templates or make things in a way that is all consistent with your branding, colors, logos, that type of thing. And then think about having some really good high quality visuals. And now compared to like even 10 years ago, we have such good cameras just through our phones. You know, most phones take really good photos and videos, so there is even less of a barrier to create that type of content. You know, we don't always have to hire somebody to do that for us, because that often can cost a lot of money, take time, and then you get something that, you know, you can reuse a few times, but it's the cost of that is quite high. And then also have clear calls to action. So you've made this infographic or you've posted this photo, but what do you want people to do about that or with that? It's important to make sure that's all very clear. And you can do that depending on the platform. On a platform like Facebook, you can add a button or you can put a link in the caption. Instagram, you can't really, like, you can put a link in the caption, but it's not clickable. So often people do like link in bio, but you know, you lose some of the traffic from the post to the link in bio sometimes. You can link things on stories, but overall it's just making sure that whenever you make your call to action is as short of a trip from that to the actual call to action as possible to the person that is viewing that content. Because most of us just have really short attention spans and we might not, you know, you might be interested, but if it takes too many steps to get there, you will likely lose people. All right, so these are just a few examples of things that I've enjoyed in terms of content. So a few different types. So the first one is from the refugees Instagram page, and this is an infographic that gives you a pretty big picture of like the increase of people who have been forcibly displaced over the past 10 years, right? And it's very simple, it's very clear, and it tells you a lot without giving you a lot of writing on it. And it's something that, you know, if I'm scrolling, it'll take me 2 seconds to just stop and see what this is. The second one here, this is a screen caption of a reel, but it was around the Olympics time, and it was a really funny reel of athletes taking pictures at museums in Paris. So it was a whole video, but it was really funny and it was cute, and I liked it, and it was a collaboration between some athletes and some pages. And then this other one is an ad. It's kind of like a graphic photo mix ad, and it's from SAS Polytech. And I like this one just because it's branded really well. You see their logos, their colors are there. The copy is very minimal. I find that often I will see either posters or graphics for some really great programs or events, but they just have too much on it, and then people get overwhelmed, or you just don't read all the information because it's just too much, especially because most of us are looking at these things on our phones, so the screen's even smaller. So whenever you're creating a graphic for social media especially, be really mindful of those ratios, like the size that you're creating the graphic in and the content that goes in it. the least amount of text, the better. So just keep it, to something that if someone's scrolling past quick, in that moment you can get the gist of it. So if they, ideally that compels them to kind of stop and read the rest. And hopefully they interact with like in this case, they had an apply now button. I believe their Facebook version of this has links in the caption. But in general, it's nicely branded. It's short and sweet to the point, and it draws you in. All right, so another thing that once you've kind of come up with your content that is helpful to do is create a content calendar. And you can get really fancy with this or just keep it simple as just a spreadsheet. It also matters how much you're creating. So as I mentioned earlier, like with Open Door, we have lots of programs. We have lots of departments and we use a lot of platforms. So for me to do this on a spreadsheet, it got a little bit overwhelming. That's why I decided to go with a social media management tool, because it allows me to do a content calendar within it. But once you're creating your content calendar, what you need to keep in mind are the social media networks and accounts that you're going to schedule things to, when you're going to do that, and then your copy that includes your hashtags and your links, and then the type of stuff that you're going to put there, pictures, videos, links, that type of thing. If there are any approval steps, and then space for collaboration and feedbacks if it's more than one person working on it. The approval steps, again, is if you're working for on an organization that you need a manager or somebody else to approve the process. So if you involve them in this, it makes things a lot easier. So this here is just a screenshot of my content calendar through Hootsuite. This was for October, I believe. And then when I most of this was pre-scheduled, some of it early October, some September, some even a few months ago, just depending on what it is. But it allows me to have things way ahead of time, so I'm not panicking. So for example, a lot of our dates that are set that we know are happening, or holidays or cultural things that have a specific date, we can create all of that content ahead of time and just schedule it for the year. And that takes oh my gosh, tomorrow's Mother's Day, are we putting up a post, what are we putting, that type of thing. But we know it's happening, we know when it is, so we can do that way ahead of time. And then again, going back to being one or two people doing this, it takes away that stress of being reactionary, and instead of being more proactive, so we can then use all of that time to do other things. So investing a little bit of time to schedule things will save you a lot of time down the road. All right, so after you have created content, you've scheduled it, things are going out, think about how you're going to engage with your audience. So it's about building and maintaining your engagement, because if people are reacting to things, they're sharing, they're commenting, organically that post will be shown to more people. So if you get comments, definitely respond as quick as possible. Encourage discussions whenever possible, feedback, that type of thing. Another thing that is really good to do is for you to engage with other pages' content. So you, like, as your page, you can go and like other organizations, comment on it, kind of like that makes you visible in those pages as well. And also, show some love and support to other awesome organizations that you support and engage with. And other things are really great are that user generated content. So I love it when people attend our programs or events, or when we're out in the community and people take their own videos or own photos and tag us and share that, because that gives us access to an audience that we otherwise would not have access to, which is all of their followers. but then we can share that content as well. And it's really, really good as a way to gain a new and larger audience, but also create content without having to put in the work. Because people usually are really great at making those things. And then it shows another perspective of whatever event, program, whatever that content is about. So if you put it all together in a kind of timeline, how does all look like? You think about planning your content, be as proactive as possible, get creative with all of the things that you're doing, writing really good copy. Again, after this workshop, I'll send you some prompts for that if you choose to use something like AI or a combination of both, because it is a true time saver, especially for things that are like for all the holidays and stuff. Sometimes I'll write a big prompt and help me kind of get it all started. And then schedule your content. Again, that's a big time saver, but also it helps you figure out how does that compare to the plan that you've created. Do you have enough content to reach the goals that you've set? Do you have that stuff in the right platforms for the audience that you are working with or that you're trying to reach, that type of thing? And then keep that engagement, right? I often joke that when people walk by our office, we're all on our phones. It's like, we promise we're working, but it's like we're working on the social media related things. All right. So after you've done all of that and things are out there, you have great posts and people are interacting. How do you measure if things are working? Because that's very important, especially if you're using social media as a tool for your organization for specific goals. So there are specific things to track your engagement rate. That would be kind of like the likes, comments, shares, your reach and impressions. So that's kind of like who has seen it and who has interacted with your content, and then the conversion. So in sales, usually conversion means like, oh, we posted this ad and then we had this many sales. Because we're not doing sales, often for us is goes back to the goals that you've set up. So if your goal was to get more registrations for an event, then your conversion is like, okay, how many registrations did we get after posting this? Or donations, like have our donations increase or that type of thing. And to kind of see those analytics and see the whether things are working, you have a few tools. If you're using just Facebook and Instagram, the Facebook Insights gives you a big picture of those things, and you can do it by date ranges and things like that. Most social media management tools have their own analytics things that is really good as well. And then Google Analytics, if you're wanting to see if things are going, like where things are coming from. So it'll show you if traffic is coming from like a social media page, that type of thing. For analytics, again, it's a huge thing that you could have a whole class on. But I would say for most people, just keeping it simple and looking at what were my goals and am I achieving them, and looking at the analytics based on those goals, because it gives you so much information, it can be quite overwhelming. All right, so this is just a screenshot of, I think this was as of yesterday, and then you can see there is like a date range here, and it's showing me things like a reach breakdown. Again, just one of the things, because you can do a lot of, this is a big overview, but you can do get analytics on very specific things, and you can see there's reach that's increasing, interaction is decreased a little bit, our followers, click links, and then what I really like to see here too is a breakdown. So this is an overall here, but then we have things from our organic interactions. This is kind of like what I really like in terms of like how much that we're showing is going out there and being seen without us having to pay for it. And then of course, we often buy ads, especially for like classes, workshops, and events where we really want to drive that registration traffic. So this shows me here, like, what is that reach breakdown from ads versus from our organic content. And then I have another really cool thing. I really like this. This is not through like Facebook, but it is through Hootsuite. It's a really cool thing that they have where you can look at other accounts that are similar, and it will give you what their reach is compared to yours. So if you like do similar services and you want to see like, hey, how is this organization doing, or how do we compare to this, that type of thing, I really like that. And you can do a report by date and all kinds of things. So in this case, I'm always looking at other settlement agencies just to see how they're doing compared to us. Like, is there anything, especially because we offer similar services, is there anything that maybe I'm not thinking about, I'm missing, or like what other things could I do to maximize our use of social media? All right, so another thing that I found that as nonprofits is important is working with other people, and also like, how do we work on a budget? So I find that partnerships with other nonprofits or organizations or people that care about the same cause are really great. Again, because that goes back to reaching their audiences that might not be aware or engaged with your content yet. So it's really good for that. So cross posts or cross promotions, contents, campaigns, that's really, really useful. I also find that when you have low resources, working with students is really, really useful. I have been working with this SAS Polytech Graphic Communications program for the past few years, and their students are incredible. They are super talented, and this is mostly for like graphic design related things because that's what they're doing, but usually those are the things that I would have to, figure out a budget to create a campaign and that type of thing. But as part of their programs, they do like an internship, and often I usually end up hiring our summer students from that program just because they're so engaged, they're already familiar through the internship they've done with us. And in general, the program is just doing an incredible, incredible job at creating opportunities for students to not only do awesome work, but get some experience at the same time. So I found that those have allowed us to do big projects with very minimal resources, but in a way where everyone got, a great benefit out of it. And then think about those free tools. So going back to like Canva for nonprofits or discounts, there's often a lot of grants that you can look at, or like credits. If you have Google Workspace for nonprofits, you get Google Ad credits there. Again, navigating all of that is its own thing, but definitely something worth looking into if that's something you want to do. And then something that I like to think about too, especially when you're working in the nonprofit sector thing, is the how you engage and how do you work with community, especially when you are working with vulnerable populations. So a lot of us are working with organizations that are in that space. So making sure that our language is inclusive, making sure that, think about captions for your videos, or like descriptions of photos and captions. And then there's many, many ways to make things accessible. These are just a couple very small examples, but there are actually a lot of people that put really good information out there about how to make things inclusive and accessible. And then thinking about those ethical practices of privacy and consent, right? So if we're taking photos, let's say we have, we recently have a vaccine clinic. We're not necessarily going to go take photos of people getting healthcare related things and post that online. We might get a photo of our nurses and have them share something, but not of people in that when they're doing that. Or let's say if someone's having a counseling session, that's not the thing that we're going to go and capture, but rather something related to that if you want to promote that. And then making sure that people are aware, especially, for example, at Open Door, that's a really important one. In the case where someone might be coming from as a refugee, where they can't have their photo online. So whenever we're out there, we're very mindful of that and make sure that, we know if that's the case, so we can make sure that they're participating in that. We're not saying like, oh, hey, get out of here for the photo, because it's like it's on us to figure out how do we make sure to respect that privacy while their participation in the event or the class is not disturbed in any way. And then if you're doing anything related to raising funds or collecting money, definitely transparency there. That goes a long way. And sometimes it doesn't happen often, but definitely expect if people have questions about that to be able to have good answers. And then another thing that I find interesting and important is the comment section. When to delete, when to hide things or reply to comments. And I'm talking in this case like the negative things, because if it's neutral or positive, definitely engage as much as possible. But once in a while, we'll have either real people or bots that will put really nasty or racist comments, and depending on what it is, sometimes I'll just delete it. Like there's no reason for this to be anywhere. Sometimes it's rude, but it's not worth deleting. But I also don't really want other people to see that. So I'll just hide it to the person that made that comment, and their followers can still see it. But no one else is going to interact with it. If it's, a tough comment, but it has some merit and there's an opportunity for education there, then we'll definitely reply. And again, this is another great use of an AI tool where if you're getting a lot of that, you can write a prompt that asks like, hey, I'm managing comments here and I want to reply to this, and you can tell it the tone, the audience and all of these things, and it can give you ideas on how to reply to things, so it's not so overwhelming. But definitely something to keep in mind, especially if the organization that you work with is prone to getting people who just have those interactions. For example, whenever we have vaccine clinics, I always kind of brace myself for all of the comments that are going to come with that, because according to half of those, we're funded by big pharma and all of these things, and I'm like, where's my check? Because we're definitely not. But we definitely prepare for that, and especially when it goes out, just so we can interact that or make sure that things are not out there for too long if it's something that I don't really want to stay there. I meant to put this slide before the other one, but if we go back just to this topic of collaborating and working on a budget, this is a really good example of how that can work really well. So in September, for the Queen City Marathon, we partnered up, we worked with Run Regina to create this mural on the ground. So my team and I and some volunteers went there at like 3:30 in the morning to paint this awesome mural. And then the runners, were able to see it as they're running. And this is kind of a version of our welcome lawn sign, but has not only welcome in different languages, but messages of encouragement for the runners. So when we posted this as a collaboration. So it's Regina Open Door and Run QCMA, which means that shows on their page as well, not just our page. So if you see here, like this post inside, so this is what Instagram can show you. If you have like a business account, you can definitely see information about how things are working. So if you look at the non-follower reach is pretty big, right? Usually our non-follower reach is under 10%. But because this was posted on their page as well, these are all people that might not either be engaged, aware, or know about the Regina Open Door that now have seen something that would likely lead them to ideally learn more. So profile activity, that usually means like have gone on our profile or followed, that type of thing. And it again, it shows that we didn't really have to pay for this or spend a bunch of money. It's something that we were doing anyway. And by leveraging their audience with our audience on their end, they probably, again, saw something similar. So maybe some newcomers that might not be aware about Run Regina and their events through something like this, by seeing it on our page, might be like, oh, maybe this is something I want to do. So it's beneficial for both of us. And with that, that is kind of it for the presentation. I have lost my question slide, but yeah, if anyone has any questions, I would be happy to answer. I'll just stop sharing.
Don't be shy, folks. Anyone feel free to just jump right in.
Yes, we have more of the lawn signs. You can pick them up at Open Door, just to our front desk, and they're just by donation of $5 or whatever you can give just to cover the printing costs.
Thanks. And which location, Victoria?
It would be the Donahue
Donahue.
building, so on 11th Avenue, right across from the Cure, and
I'll be there on Wednesday night, so
oh, perfect.
I'll talk to you later to get some.
Yes, I can leave one with Shelley too.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course.
If we're not seeing any, oh, we got Cameron that's got her hand up. Cameron, you can put your if you want to put your camera on and ask your question, that would be great.
Yeah, there we go. I guess the one thing I have been struggling the most with is gathering those stories to tell. I know how impactful it can be, but especially working in the nonprofit space with maybe clients that don't necessarily want to tell their story.
Hmm.
Do you have any maybe advice for that at all, or how we can
Sure.
improve that in a different way?
Yeah, same struggle here, because you're right. Sometimes it's especially again, if could you tell me a little bit about what you guys your reach, right?
Yeah, I'm with
Yeah, so yeah, so food security related things, right? It might be stories that, people are not comfortable talking about that in a public setting.
Mhm.
So we've whenever we've wanted to do that, I found the easiest thing is maybe connect with people that are already working with those clients. So in our case, instead of me asking or doing a call out, I ask our staffs like, hey, is there anybody that you've met that maybe is really outgoing or would be happy to share something? And I will create like a 3-question thing for them to work with that person, because they have built that rapport already, and it's a lot easier than a stranger.
Right.
Be like, hey, tell me your story, right? And sometimes you can do those anonymous stories. I'm gonna try to find it. Hootsuite, the platform I use often, they have like PD stuff that's really good, and they had one on copywriting for success stories, but they had a great method of writing compelling stories without having to share the person, and it was specifically for these cases of where the story is really important and impactful, but there have to be considerations about the who the person is. So in the case study, they were talking about victims of domestic violence, right? Like not all of them are comfortable or safe in being out in public, but their story is still really important. So oftentimes you can, have it as an anonymous, and that's where you can do like a nice graphic or a photo that's not of the person. or quotes are really helpful then too, like for the post itself instead of the photo of a person. Because when people are having those conversations, they say awesome things that you can quote, and you can be like, being able to access the REACH program allows my children to have nutritious snacks, and like you can have that as a quote and in your caption, or if it's part of a blog post, have the full story. And again, your audience will still get the impact of that without then that person needing to be part of the story because of what their comfort zone or safety or whatever it is.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? If not, what I'm gonna suggest we do is that we move into our breakout rooms now, and then we'll come back a few minutes before the end of the session. And if things come up in your kind of small group discussions, we could we'll still have access to Victoria for a few minutes at the end, because we've got lots of time here to being in our group. So we'll maybe plan on going in the groups right now, and coming back at about maybe 20 after for have a larger group discussion. So
Sorry, I'm just setting them up here. Just sorry, bear with me because I think some people had to leave, so I'm just going to shuffle them a little bit. Sorry, bear with me. And okay,
Then-
I set it so that they automatically close in 10 minutes. Is that enough time or
let's make it a little longer than that. Let's make it
15?
because let's make it 15.
Okay, sounds great.
Thanks, Colleen. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you all managed to have a really interesting conversation. I probably could have left you in there a little longer. I'm sure everybody always, you just get on a roll. And I noticed we do have time here, and we just have a fairly small group. So why don't we kind of extend our discussion a little bit further? People that were in room 2, is there anybody that wants to kind of just do a little bit of a summary of like what your conversation was, some of the things that you talked about, issues you're having managing your social media accounts, that sort of thing?
So in our group, I'm pretty sure we were group 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about, some of our like main takeaways of like using AI tools and, the new ways that we can use them that we didn't really think of before. And with content calendars, like keeping all the holidays. Sorry, I can't think of words right now. Having things scheduled. One thing that we ended up talking about was accessibility in like social media posts, and if we could somehow make like a checklist almost, because there's so many things and there's so many different tools on all the different platforms on how to make our posts as accessible as possible. We talked about Adobe Color for like contrasting and different fonts and stuff. But yeah, what does the group have to say about that?
I wish we were all in a room together, we're sitting around a table instead of this awkward little weird Zoom room that we're in.
I like your idea of a checklist, especially when you contrast that with your audience, right? Because, as you said, if it's like visual related things, like for accessibility, depending on the audience, like if your primary audience is you want to cater that to, then you can make kind of like a checklist that, as you said, gives you all of that and helps you with those tools. I'm sure it exists, and if not, like I'm sure it would be easy enough to create one, which also is a piece of content on its own. Like if your organization is working with things related to accessibility, just be like, hey, have you thought about this when making your posts? And like put parts of that checklist in a visual graphic. that is something that's like very shareable, right? Because a lot of people that consider those things, like I would share that, or other organizations that are thinking the same. And then it brings awareness to your work if that's part of what you do.
Anyone else from room two wanna kind of jump in on something that stood out for you from your conversations?
I think another big thing that our group discussed was the idea of going outside of like your inner circle to make sure that you're proofing things and it's not just an echo chamber of like, oh yeah, that sounds good. I definitely interpret it that way, and making sure that you have others who like have never been in on the discussion, see it, read it, make sure that they get the same message that you're actually trying to put out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sometimes I'll make a typo or something doesn't make sense and I'll get a text from my mom like, is that what you meant to put out? I'm like, no. Or like if somebody else scheduled it and I'm like, what was that? But no, you're very much right. Like when other eyes always catch things, or like if something's not clear, because we know that information, inside out, but if it's, not clear to somebody else, that's what matters, right? Because that's who we want them to know.
Yeah, that's such a good point, Leo, and I know that's especially important, like when it comes time to kind of testing your key messages. Like, if it's just you and your insider group working, and it all seems to make sense to you, but like I often will run it past, like my husband's usually my guinea pig, and he's like, that makes no sense. What are you trying to say, right? He's really honest, right? So finding that person that's extremely honest, that'll just you know, not worry about hurting your feelings. Like,
Unless you're sensitive. I'm sensitive.
yeah,
I mentioned this earlier too. I'm putting this in the chat. It's that CBC podcast that was out on Saturday, but it was just really timely. It was a great conversation about youth advocates using social media to talk about climate change and using like a Taylor Swift concept and concert and calling out RBC and like things like that. It was really good. It was really well done, and it was also very inspiring because these are kids that are doing so much, and it kind of shows you that you can do a lot. Like social media tools can be really stressful and harmful, or they can be a really great way to have a great reach and advocate for things that matter to people.
yeah, I echo what Victoria said. I was listening to that program on the weekend. In fact, I was even thinking about playing it in our class on Wednesday, but it's like a little bit long. It's 31 minutes in total, but it's something really like I actually usually I'm really busy on the weekends and I'm only half listening to the radio, but I actually sat down and listened for once. My little kind of like scattered brain was really taking notice of it. So yeah, definitely well worth a listen. So our other group, Sophia, do you have anything you want to report on kind of what some of the people in your room kind of had to say?
Yes, I do. So we were lucky enough to have Victoria in our room. So we got to ask some good additional questions. And our conversation was kind of focused around first the value in investing in a higher end social media manager, and then the importance of utilizing AI to its fullest potential as it can save a lot of time and effort. And I actually had two more questions for you, Victoria, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
My first one was that you mentioned that you're kind of the only one doing social media for Open Door. And do you ever feel stuck trying to generate so much content, and how do you get over it? And then my second one, kind of related to that, is do you spend a lot of time researching new social trends and features? And within that, do you think that nonprofits can go wrong when it comes to trends? Like, is there a risk that the messaging is going to come across unauthentically? Sorry, that's a really loaded
These
question.
are great questions. To your first question, yes, so there's a team of us of 2, and right now 3 for a couple more months. But the main, like, I'm the main person that manages our socials just to keep things consistent, and it can definitely be overwhelming at times. I think what has helped is we created an internal tool where all of our programs and staff can send in requests, which is basically like a free content generator in a way. It's because we have to make sure that we're advertising a lot of our classes, workshops, programs. So that kind of takes care of that. But then, I want to make sure that our pages have other content that's more engaging, and that it also showcases other parts of the things that we do. So managing that, I think I've trialed and errored a few things. What has worked the best is kind of sitting down at the beginning of each month and looking at what's happening, and is there anything not only within our organization, but that's happening in the city or in the country or anything like that, that I can leverage to, let's say, around Mosaic. We did a giveaway, we planned a lot of things related to that during the holidays. Like, we do a 12 Days of Gratitude campaign, where we showcase all of the funders and other organizations that we're grateful to for the work that we've done. So kind of planning those big anchor things and then working around that, and definitely being able to schedule things ahead of time so then I can see and deploy resources as well. So if we have like 3 events happening in 1 week, then we know, okay, we need to have our one staff go and take photos, you're gonna take videos, and then here I'm gonna have all the captions ready for you guys, and then you just I'll put it on a draft, and then you schedule it once you have the photos, that type of thing. And then to your second question related to trends, absolutely. Like, if you look through Open Doors pages, you'll notice that rarely, if ever, we have like trending sounds or trending type of things. And that's on purpose because it's a capacity thing and an authenticity thing too, right? Because it's like, I think there would be a great and fun way to do it, but just knowing our capacity to maintain it in a way that is relevant is not there. So doing it like as a one-off, it's, it doesn't have the same impact. And I've often also seen, there might be somebody that decided to get into, very demure, and it's just not the right person to do it, and it just comes off as a little cringy. Any of those trends, it can work really well. This is not a nonprofit, but I'm not sure if you guys have followed the Els Cafe social media, especially their Instagram and TikTok. They do such a good job at being trendy. And they rarely ever talk about their products, like their ice cream, in the sense that other people would be like, hey, come check out our ice cream. It's more like the ice cream or their products are part of the things they use with funny sounds and dances and things like that. But it's authentic to them, and it fits really well to what they do, and they do such a good job. But let's say if you had a law firm or like something more serious that never do that, and suddenly they had like a post related to that, it'd be like, okay, this is odd, off brand. So I would say manage your capacity, because once you get into the trendy things, you have to do it right, and it has to be authentic to like who the organization is. It's easier with smaller organizations where you can get everybody involved. I love the one like a while ago. It was like, I'm passing the microphone to a person that blah blah blah, right? And in the case of like some organizations that I saw do it, they were able to do it with many of their staff. So that showcased a lot of information about what they do, but also who is in there doing that without having to do like a feature on them or something like that. But definitely like I don't know that I could do it sustainably in a way that it would seem authentic to who we are yet. Like I've thought about it and I definitely want to explore ways of doing more of that, but I just want to make sure that it doesn't become overwhelming or there's just this random like post that is trendy and everything else is not. And it's like what who was working that day type of thing. Hope to answer your questions and
Yes, thank you. That was perfect. And I'm laughing at the Demir thing.
I've seen a few serious things, like serious accounts. I'm like, this does not fit. Or a few others that did such a good job. I know, like I'm not sure if anybody follows Nahani Fontaine. She is from Manitoba. And usually, like politicians can be either really serious or not. I really like the way she does her social media. Because it's very authentic to her and it's like the serious issues of her as a politician, but also like a lot of really funny and trendy things. And I always say she has some awesome like Gen Z kid running her social media because it's just so good for those things in a way that it fits well and but it's not like out of place or cringy or like what is she doing, like you can still take it very like the rest of the information that she has out very serious while having fun and kind of humanizing her, right? Like it shows her as a person on a day-to-day rather than just like the politician side of it. Leo.
Curious if you had any advice on like how to get buy-in. So if you're the only person really doing like the social media and that kind of thing, and that's not even your main focus, how do you get other team members to like take the photos of events for you or actually send you information on their events so you can post about it? Yeah.
Absolutely. That was so when I started this role, because this is a fairly new role, it was new to everybody. And I definitely went through a little bit of, hey, we're doing this now. You should participate. I would say the easiest thing is to find the one or two people that are already excited about it and get that buy-in first, because that kind of gives power in numbers in a way, right? And then give people an easy process. Whether it's like, hey, bookmark this form whenever you have something, please submit it here. Or I don't like the email thing because it's hard to manage and then everything is like in your inbox. That's why initially we did like a form and then we built something else. But if you give people a very easy but very like specific process of how you want them to do this, because sometimes what happens is like people want to help but they don't know how, and it's a lot of like the mental load of like trying to figure out how to do it can be a barrier. But if you have like a quick chat with like, hey, we know would love to see more photos of our events online, what's the easiest way for you to give me this, and take that information and create like a fact sheet or a form, whatever. Like I'm not sure what your internal processes are for your organization, but if you have like, hey, this is how we're doing this, and test that, see how that works, and then get feedback from that, and then update it as needed. But I find that usually the main barrier for people's buy-in is the process of how to do it. Like sometimes it's like they think it might be too time consuming, but if you give them, it's like, actually, no, it will take you like 2 minutes, and then you show them. And I often like to show people how well things are doing. So I'll be like, hey, that post about thing, like it got like, 5,000 views already. It's kind of just like the little like celebrations. Because then people take ownership, especially if it's their events or their programs. Um, and then I can tell them like, hey, that's doing really well. People really like this. Or like sometimes when it's always our vaccine thing, and be like, hey, we need to chat about some of these comments. Just let me know if you want me to like say anything specific as a message, that type of thing.
Fantastic, great information. Any other questions that folks have? If not, I have one, Victoria. I know that you are a big user of AI and in particular ChatGPT. Can you tell us a little bit about the advantages of the paid version versus the non-paid version? Because I know that's come up in some of the other conversations that we've had, and like your views on kind of whether it's worth that investment or not.
Yes, so the main reason why we went with a paid version is because I wanted to a while ago I was using it to create some documents like a timeline infographic that needed, like I was going through about 50 years worth of annual reports, which humanly it would be impossible for me to like do that in the timeline I wanted to do. So it's really great to gather that specific information. But because I was uploading this, like even though these things were already made public, we just wanted to be extra careful. So that was the main driver behind using a paid version, because technically, and what it says, again, this is not for sure because technology changes, you can make it so it doesn't learn from that. So like that information wouldn't be used for other models, like when it's answering other things, that type of thing. And then you can delete that from so from what you give them. But the other thing that I really like about the paid version is that you can do kind of like it will crawl the web live. So you can be like, hey, can you check out this website and give me this information from it? Up until that point, I have to double check, but up until that point, the free version only could browse the internet to a certain date, which gives you some limitations. But then with the paid version, you can also do other plugins like a Canva plugin, or you can upload things in and be able to have better outputs from it. So sometimes I'll have like a graphic and I'll be like, hey, I'm posting this on social media. I'll give it some context, like, can you give me like 3 caption options for this? So I don't have to describe it, it'll just look at it. And then the other thing that I've noticed is that it hallucinates a lot less. And by hallucinates, it just makes up information. Because that's the thing with AI, right? For the most part, is really great, and especially when it's not factual stuff, it's awesome. But sometimes if it doesn't have enough information, it'll just make up something to fill in that. Which in some cases it doesn't matter because you can tell, but in other cases, especially if people are not taking the time to like read through everything, it might be a little dangerous. I'm not sure if anybody remembers, there was the case of this law firm that used AI for it, and then it generated like a made up case that based the whole thing, and it was quite embarrassing for them. So, depending on what you're using it for, it can have its advantages. But for me, I like the paid version because of, all of the features related to uploading things, browsing the web for that type of thing. But for the most part, the free version is good for most people, especially if you're not uploading things. And if you are really good at writing a prompt, your output should be really good. Because I think that's the main thing, that like if you just be like, hey, can you give me an idea for a campaign about adopting dogs? I'll be like, okay, here's like a super broad, but it's like, hey, I want you to act like as a marketing expert with knowledge of like animal rights, and I am in Regina, Saskatchewan, and blah blah blah. Like give it as much context as possible and say like, and I am creating this. And when we were in the group, I was telling them a really great thing to do is to ask you questions. Like, do you have any questions for me to create this? And they'll ask you things to fill in those gaps that you maybe didn't give it in context or it doesn't know. And your output will be much better, and also it'll be less like regenerating or like you doing the work because you kind of did the work when you wrote the prompt.
That's great. Thank you for that answer on that, Victoria. Well, I think we've reached our 11:30, a little bit past. So I just want to thank you again, Victoria, for taking time out of what I know is an extremely busy schedule, both with your work, and I know you do the job of 10 people as it is, and now this campaign that you're running to the finish line now in the next few weeks. So we wish you all the best with that, and just
Thank
know
you so
that
much.
we're very grateful for you joining us today. With
Thank you
that,
so much,
everybody-
Lynn.
Everybody have a great day. If you haven't voted already, remember it's voting day, and have a good one, folks. We'll see you hopefully next week, same time, same place.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.